Hi everyone, it's Adam here from DNF1. Just before we begin the podcast, I wanted to quickly share with you some exciting news. For this month, the DNF1 Podcast is proudly sponsored by Manscaped. For the entire month of March, you can get hold of some great Manscaped products like this, and plenty more other great products on their website for 20% off and free shipping.
Oh my god! Wow!
All you have to do is head over to manscaped.com and use our promo code DNF1 to receive 20% off your order and also free shipping too. We loved using Manscaped products and we know that you will too, so make sure to get yours now. Trust us, your balls will thank you. So hello there and welcome to a brand new episode of the DNF1 F1 Podcast, the show where we take all of the latest news, gossip and events going on in the Formula One world and we relay that back to you for a bit of healthy debate and discussion for your listening and viewing pleasure, depending on what platform you choose to follow us on. And of course, this episode is the final episode of all of the episodes that we have done this week. So it's going to be a nice little break to look forward to. It's also the penultimate car launch of all of the teams. Only one more to go after this one at Ferrari, which of course we will not see until next Wednesday, the 10th of March. But today it is all about the Williams and specifically the Williams FW43B. And for those of you already wondering, if you do hear some background noise of screaming children, that's my neighbour's kids. There's nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. Children are children, you know, they can be loud, they can be quiet, but these ones are loud in particular. And obviously they're having a good time outside playing in the garden. Anyway, that aside, of course, Courtney joining me once again. Courtney, how has your day been? Are you okay?
Oh, good. Another busy day at work, but you guys are not here to know about my work life. I'd just like to second what Adam just said about the episodes. It's obvious we've been very busy, and I'm sure some of you have really struggled to keep up with the amount of uploads we've put out. But Adam has kindly put together a playlist. So in the build up to the new season, if you have a couple of hours to spare, just feel free to look back at what we've done, because, you know, we have put a lot of work into this, and we hope we've given you a good indication of who we reckon to start off where even before testing. And, you know, I think we've given some good reactions to the liveries as well. So, yeah, please check it out. So, Adam, back to you, mate.
Yeah, and of course, you've got some of the more likeable teams and more popular teams and some of your favourite teams as well. It's all there in the playlist, so definitely check that out if you've missed any of the episodes over the last 2 weeks or so. But of course, let's talk about the Williams, Courtney. The Williams FW43B broke cover today, or Friday at least at the time we're recording this. And interestingly enough, they were going to go for a very unique method of launching the car. Williams himself had created an app, which I downloaded from the iOS App Store. And basically what this is going to do, this is going to be like augmented reality. So if anyone's ever played Pokemon Go, I think is the best comparison that I can remember. It accesses your camera and it allows to put a still image or a 360 image of the car. And basically you can look through your camera as it would do. And it's almost as if the car is in your house, in your garden. What I was going to do, I was going to obviously use the app and then go into my garden or my living room and take a picture in there and say something clever like, I don't know, a wild Williams FW43B, like homage to Pokemon Go has appeared. Unfortunately, last night, apparently the app itself was hacked and there were some images that were being leaked online that I had seen, of course, that were very similar to what we saw today. And as a result, the app got taken down and we weren't able to use it. So whoever it was that decided to do that, like, you suck. Like, honestly, I honestly do not know why there's an incentive for someone to do that. I mean, this is why we can't have nice things. So, you know, not cool, whoever it was that decided to do that.
I just don't understand. You go, oh, do you know what? Up to anything nice later, Adam? Oh, yeah, I'm just thinking of hacking the Williams app and ruin the fun for everyone else. It's weird, strange mentality, but hey, I'm not into that sort of stuff, so I never get it.
I mean, the only rationale I could think for it is basically just to see early images of the car. The same thing happened with Aston Martin, of course. People that tried to go on the Aston Martin website that had signed up for the launch virtual event, and they could access images of the car just before the launch to get it there, people had hacked into that as well. So they had to disable that feature, and you just had to watch the launch live as it was, which I don't know why people do it. I honestly do not get the rationale
Weird.
for it. They're just really sad, boring people, obviously very good at hacking, but yeah, other than that, what can you do? So that's life, unfortunately. There's always someone that ruins it for everybody. But nonetheless, that aside, looking at the car itself, I've got to say, Courtney, I mean, I saw a lot of mixed reviews about this new livery. I actually love it. I think it looks fantastic. One of my favorite ones so far. What do you make of the new livery on the Williams FW43B?
I'm not sure, mate. I'm not sure. I mean, the first indication said it might warm to me with time. When we physically see the car in testing and, the first couple of races, it might warm to me with time. I'm happy that they're freshening it up, because my complaints with some of the couple of old cars, Red Bull, I'm not happy that some of the teams haven't refreshed the livery, given that the cars are barely changed. You want to have a fresh feeling going to the season, and Williams has certainly done that. The car was quite bland last season, so I'm pleased they've done something a little bit more noticeable. And I'm also happy that they've sort of given a tribute to some of the classic Williams liveries that a lot of us sort of know and love from the past. I like that feature. I don't know, it's kind of towards the rear that I'm not too happy about. But look, overall, it's a good move. But yeah, it might give me a little bit of time to warm to it. Yeah, as you said, I think there's mixed feelings, but I've noticed that the majority of people do like it though.
It does seem to be the rear of the car that people are unsure of. And I think that was more of as I said, an homage to the actual Williams family rather than just the Williams team, not ignoring the heritage with the Williams team, especially under new management like Doralton Capital, which is always a nice touch, especially with the yellow tint as well, playing tribute to that, which is great. They mentioned the main inspiration for the livery was to include features of the very legendary FW43B, the 1992 Williams that guided Nigel Mansell to his world championship back then. And, that was one of my favorite ever looking cars of all time. Absolute beautiful piece of machinery, very fast as well. He won 9 Grand Prix in that machine, absolutely dominated the 92 world championship. And of course, went on to do the same in 1993, back when Williams were the big top team at Formula One. Pretty sure that's where they aim to be in the future. But that aside, as I said, I was a big fan of the livery. I wasn't really sure what direction they were going to go down, especially when they did the shakedown run last week and the car was completely dark blue. So I was kind of hoping that they'd go with something like that. And I expected it to look a little bit like the Williams of the 2010s with the blue and the white, a combination of the two.
The Maldonado era.
Yeah. The golden era of Williams, their last race winner, Pastor Maldonado, let the GOAT live on in motorsport, whatever it is he's doing right now. I'd love to see him back in Formula One, but it mostly just be meme worthy more than anything else. That aside, I'm a fan of the car. I like the look of the livery. I know people give it mixed reviews, and perhaps it's one of those that might warm to some people. I suppose with a render or a virtual reality render, whichever one you want to call it, it's harder to sort of appreciate it on a piece of paper or on a computer screen until you actually see it on track. It's probably one of those that will probably grow on people as it looks on track, but I think it looks great already, and I hope it looks good on the track as well. I hope it's fast. That is one thing I do hope it is, more than anything else. In terms of the car itself, George Russell did an interview with Sky Sports F1 today. He was talking about what it was like to drive the car in the first shakedown last week at Silverstone. He said it's a significant step forward, which is great. It's great to hear from George, and I know George wouldn't oversell this if he didn't believe the car was that much better. They still seem to feel that their targets this season are beating Haas and Alfa Romeo and maybe trying to get to the back end of the midfield. Personally, I think that's very, very realistic. I don't know about you, Courtney, where you feel their expectations are for this season.
I think that to be positive, and if Mercedes are taking another step forward with the engine, if they got this new investment, I mean, why can't they look to be challenging the likes of AlphaTauri or particularly Alpine? If Alpine aren't really putting too much emphasis on this year's car, why can't Williams have a go at challenging them?
Well, it's certainly not out of the question. I think with 2021, and I think this is kind of why we'll talk about this next week when Ferrari unveils their new car, why the expectation is that Ferrari in particular, for example, aren't going to be challenging Mercedes like they have been doing, except for last year, for the last 6 or 7 years. It's because you can only improve so much on the car that it would take the top team to drop down by so much and the team below them to really improve that much to kind of level out the playing field to sort of mitigate that gulf. In Williams's case, I think it's realistic that they can try and challenge a team like AlphaTauri, but a lot would have to happen on both sides, given the base that's and the homologation of the rules from last season that we're going to see. Just 2022 is a better objective for everybody to move forward. Even Mercedes in that regard. But it's going to be a hard ask in 2021. It's possible, but I think for them, being better than Haas and Alfa Romeo absolutely has to be the minimum. The aim for them. I think by minimum they're going to be better than Haas. I don't, based on what we talked about in that episode yesterday, there's nothing to me that suggests that Williams aren't going to be better than Haas unless the Williams makes a significant step backwards, which I can't see happening.
I've got an important question to ask, though, Adam. Got an important question to ask.
Go on then.
Will George Russell get his first points for Williams? Because Mercedes is an interesting one, because Mercedes, it was so gutted from missing out on the win when he actually scored his first points in Formula One. So I think it would be a great achievement on a personal level for George for him to get his first points. Is that possible? Because I think it is.
Well, you're right. He no longer has to worry about having the unwanted record of having the most races without scoring a point. I believe Max Chilton, I might be wrong in that, might have that, or someone like that. Might be Luca Badoa, actually. I think the closest he got was almost finishing fourth in the 1999 European Grand Prix in the Minardi, and then it broke down about 4 laps from the end. Old F1.
That's an impressive stat, Adam, I must say.
It's not one that you'd want to hold on to, but George, I think, was like almost tied fourth, I think, with Max Chilton, I think, on the all-time list. And that certainly was a record that he was on course to actually surpass everybody this season. Thankfully, we're not going to have to worry about that because George is way too good to have not scored a point in Formula One. In this Williams, I think it's absolutely possible. I think it was extremely close. And we, of course, Imola aside, because perhaps he should have converted there if it weren't for his mistake. In Mugello in particular, he was so close, literally seconds from, Sebastian Vettel struggling in the Ferraris from getting that, and the Alfa Romeos as well. It's about taking the opportunities. He will get more opportunities this season than the Williams. It's a lot more competitive car. As I said, the pecking order is going to be condensed a little bit in terms of the gulf between the top team and the bottom. Well, might be more between Mercedes, for example, and Haas for obvious reasons. But in Williams' case, they're going to be a lot closer to the points this season than they were last year. And, considering how sporadic some of the races were last season, you may end up with a scenario where George Russell may find himself in the points. I mean, look at Grosjean last year at the Nürburgring, at the Eiffel Grand Prix, completely nowhere for most of the race, and the safety car comes out of nowhere, right place, right time, and he holds on to the points. So it's definitely doable. And a driver of George's caliber, now that he's got those points, even though it was in the Mercedes and he would have much rather have got the win or a podium, having that experience will serve him very, very well. And obviously another year in the sport. I think if George continues to drive the way that he did in the second half of last season and probably improve on that as we expect him to do so, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he in particular can get a point for Williams, and maybe Nicholas Latifi too. Let's not undersell him. His second season, he'll be much better driver for it. He's a very good driver. He was by no means completely outclassed by George. Perhaps on Saturdays he was, but on Sundays he was good. Nicholas Latifi, I can't fault him on his performances. So I'm confident Williams will do well. How do you feel on this one, Courtney? I know you said that you expect George perhaps to get a point this season in this car. Do you feel Nicholas Latifi perhaps might be able to do the same?
I feel that this season is very important for both of these drivers. I think it's pretty obvious that George Russell is the next man in line to drive at Mercedes. So I think George will need to be putting in some performances to keep himself sort of there or thereabouts, to keep himself in mind for Mercedes. I think for Nicholas Latifi, I think he could possibly be in that danger list. Some of the drivers we mentioned before, like Giovinazzi, Mazepin, one or two more as well on the grid, that they don't perform well enough. Formula One's a brutal sport. And if Latifi doesn't put in some noticeable performances, and of course part of it comes down to the car, I think he's going to be one of those drivers that could be in danger of losing the seat. Because let's think hypothetically, if Bottas was to leave Mercedes, I can imagine him going back to Williams, for example, and I just think that would put Latifi at risk. I don't know, but I that's obviously just an hypothetical situation. But I just look through that drivers, and I always think, which one of you are going to struggle if you don't do well? And I think he seems like a nice enough guy. He seems like competent enough overall, but all it takes is a couple of mistakes to sort of drain your confidence. And before you know it, you're out the back door. It's brutal, but it's a possibility if he doesn't do well this season.
Well, maybe. I totally understand that. I mean, in the Bottas scenario, the assumption would be that George Russell would be the one replacing him. So there would be still a seat available for Latifi to take. I think for the Williams project, yes, George Russell's in it for this season, but it only seems a matter of time before he ends up in the Mercedes. So Latifi does seem to be the driver that I think Williams will be more invested in terms of bringing this long-term project. And I feel that they have enough confidence in Latifi from what they've seen of him to be able to do that with him. Over time, yes, you're right. Of course, there will be an expectation for results to come more often than they have done, given that Williams now have this opportunity, like everybody else, to really establish himself at the front of the field once again, once the 2022 rules kick in. Again, it depends on what they do. And if they strike gold on this canoe car, then that's going to be a great platform for them to go on 2022 beyond. Speaking of the 2021 car, though, let's not forget, unlike Haas, Williams are very much interested in this season, and they've not completely abandoned this car in favor of the 2022 car. Talking about the car itself, a few technical elements that we did spot on this car in particular. Now, with the digital element of these renders, teams notoriously tend to leave out a lot of details. Haas released the 2021 car, or 2020 car, I should say. Williams, there were a few details on this car to just quickly go over. It seems that a lot of their development has gone around the side pod vanes. So on the sides of the side pods, you've got the vanes that sort of wrap around it. The front, or the main side pod vane wraps at the front, they've sort of been, instead of being split at the top corner, they now sort of wrap around. So you'll see this in the pictures of the car, obviously, that you can see at the top if you're watching this on video. But they used to sort of hang in like 3 threads, but these ones sort of wrap over the front, which is quite a nice touch. I think would be quite good for the airflow. They've also put some little front airflow flaps at the bottom on the outboard area. So they sort of appear there underneath. So I think that will be good to manage the airflow. And also there's a small fin just at the bottom of the floor where the diffuser sort of interacts with the diffuser. That's going to manage the airflow around the diffuser a lot better, despite the fact that they would have lost a lot of airflow management owing to the trimming of the floor at the rear end from last season. So Williams look like they've done things to manage the airflow on their car to mitigate the loss of downforce and airflow that they're going to suffer from as a result of the new regulations. So that's a nice touch. The engine cover at the sides are a bit wider than what we've seen at the Mercedes and the Aston Martin. So it's still a trimmed down package. Obviously, naturally, the teams go for that. But whereas we've seen the Mercedes and the Aston Martin, Mercedes powered cars with that little bulge on the inlet on the left-hand side of the engine covers, Williams' bodywork's a little bit wider. So you don't see a bulge on that car, but it's the same sort of prospect or same sort of design concept of what Mercedes and Aston Martin have done. They've just gone for a bit of a wider one rather than a tight fitted one that shows that area. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But overall, the philosophy is still there from Williams. They're sticking to what they know. And it seems that a lot of work has been done to sort of mitigate any downforce and airflow management that they've lost from the new rules. And it looks nice. It looks pretty elegant, nice little features. It's about the little differences. And I think this is something that Williams have struggled with over the last couple of years, is trying to make all of those little things that they put on their car all work in tandem with each other and sort of work together to add a percent of performance here, add a percent of performance there. And then it all adds up to being a very fast car, because that's what the best teams do. That's what Mercedes do. It's what Red Bull do. And Williams, it looks like they've managed to get on top of it with this car. It looks good.
Let's not forget, though, a couple of seasons ago, they weren't even ready for pre-season testing. I don't know. Williams just seemed like a team that are going in the right direction. Yes, it was sad to see the Williams family leave, but they knew that there's only so much they could do for the team going forward. And I think they'd want to see their project be as successful as possible. So they kind of sacrifice their shares in the company in order for that to happen. So yeah, if you have a look, I think compared to last season ago, they're in a much better position, and they've got a more than competent driver in George Russell. I do think could put in some special performances for them this season.
Absolutely. And that's something that I hope that they will see more of this season than not. Williams have made a lot of steps forward in the last few years. I think people don't realise that despite being at the back of the field, Williams were completely in a different league to everybody else, and not the good kind either. So the last couple of years, they've had to make huge steps forward, especially after the coronavirus pandemic last season, really set them back financially, and of course served as a catalyst for this change of ownership and technical management that we've seen with Doralton Capital obviously taken over from the Williams family. So it's good to see Williams retain that heritage and retain their values and philosophy with the new investment, with the new owners. And I really do feel that this Williams project is going in the right direction. Of course, the real test will be in 2022 when it really counts. This is a good opportunity for Williams to showcase what they can do. There's a lot of great people there. The facilities are as good as anywhere in Formula One. I would happily rank Williams's facilities up there with anybody. Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, bring your best. Williams are as good as they come. And of course, as we mentioned in the previous episode, the changes where Williams are going to take on more listed parts and gearbox from Mercedes to increase their technical partnership with them instead of Aston Martin in this regard. This is only going to serve Williams really, really well going forward, because they'll be able to allocate more resources to the areas that they can specialize in and rely confidently on a team like Mercedes to provide them with what they need. And they know it's going to be good quality because it's Mercedes. They don't provide their customers with crap, for lack of a better way of putting it. So it's all good signs for Williams. I'm really confident they're going to do well. I think they've got a good driver lineup in Russell and Latifi. And, as I said, this could be a very good year for Williams. Probably the best year that they're going to have
Definitely.
for some time. And hopefully that continues onwards in 2022. One thing we haven't talked about that obviously we learned over the winter break was the recruitment of Jenson Button, the 2009 world champion. Of course, made his Formula One debut with the Williams team back in 2000 and was making headlines back then as a potential world champion of the future. Lots of hype around Jenson when he first joined the team. He wasn't there very long, of course, went to Benetton the very next year. And, the rest is history after that. But Jenson will be coming back to the team as a consultant / senior advisor. Now, Courtney, forgive me if I'm being a bit naive of this, but I'm not quite sure what exactly the role is going to detail for Jenson Button, because it seems to me that perhaps there are certain facets to this Formula One team that might have been lost whilst Jenson has been going along, building his career and eventually being a world champion and everything else. And perhaps there are some other elements with the drivers in particular that perhaps Jenson is being recruited for mainly. But it seems more like an ambassadorial role for this new Williams team more than anything else. I mean, what do you think of Jenson Button coming back to Williams?
Yeah, I think Jenson Button has been brought in to bring a familiar Williams face to sort of make the transition with the new ownership as smooth as possible. Because obviously when you have a big ownership change, it can be daunting for the people that are there. And also it might be difficult for the actual owners to come into Williams and make it work. So I think they're trying to make the place feel at home. And let's not forget, Jenson Button is a great character. I certainly miss having him on the grid. I always enjoy seeing him appear on Sky Sports. He gets on well with people throughout the grid. A very likable guy. And I just don't see anything wrong coming from it. I think it's a lot of things with F1. I think maybe Haas, for example, should maybe look at this. Getting Jenson Button in is good PR. And good PR helps them bring in more revenue from fans, makes them a more attractive team to join, not only for drivers but for engineers. And these are all the things that you need to be a successful Formula One team. So, and it's also good for Jenson. Maybe he wants to get a bigger role in Formula One in the future. And I love to see ex-drivers come back and influence the future of the sport, because they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and Jenson certainly does. So yeah, I'm happy to see it happen.
Well, it could be a good role model for someone like George Russell in particular. I
Yeah.
feel like that's where the connection is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure Nicholas Latifi will be able to benefit from Jensen's experience as well. But there's that British connection between one world champion, the last world champion from Britain before Lewis Hamilton, and of course, you've got George Russell, a potential future world champion and perhaps the future of British Formula One racing. Lando Norris, of course, included in that as well. And it seems like a natural fit, a mentor kind of role that Jensen will play at Williams, and, whatever stuff Jensen will be involved in. I'm not sure. As I said, it was a strange acquisition, but it felt a lot more ambassadorial for this new team, a familiar face, like you said, to sort of win people over and fans over. Not that I felt Doralton Capital really had to win anybody over. I feel like in terms of integration into Formula One, it was almost as if the Williams family had never left. It was just new people running it. They got good people like Simon Roberts, that's the team principal now, has a history at McLaren. He knows his way around a Formula One team. He knows what, so I can see this being a good thing, but I don't really feel it's going to have as much as an impact as people were perhaps saying it is, because it's Jenson Button. I suppose it's the equivalent of when Michael Schumacher was coming back to Ferrari as an ambassador before his accident. And it really didn't really matter. It was something that Ferrari could sort of showcase, and everyone's like, oh my God, Schumacher's back at Ferrari. But it never led to anything. I mean, it almost led to him being to replace Felipe Massa when he had his injury back in 2009. But of course, because he suffered that vertebrae fracture in his neck, he wasn't able to continue driving until 2010 when he eventually went to Mercedes. So yeah, it's a strange one, but I understand the logic, and perhaps this will be a good thing for Williams. We'll have to wait and see how involved Jensen is.
But you say that, Adam, but we're talking about it, and I'm sure a lot of people are, and that's the whole point. Williams were languishing at the very bottom. They need people to be talking about them. They need to be noticed to help them get themselves further up the grid. George Russell has obviously been the spearhead of any sort of recovery they've had. But having someone like Jenson Button, I think, can only be a good thing for the team.
Oh, no, I agree. But I'm kind of thinking of the logic, well, unless you can pick up a spanner and start designing great parts that are going to make the car faster, I'm not quite sure where the value is in. I mean, as I said, I'm probably looking at this from a very naive perspective as a fan and not understanding the inner workings of what Jensen could offer with his experience. But in my head, I almost feel like if you're going to do that, you'd recruit someone in senior management from a big team, like when they had Patrick Head on as an advisor after he left the Williams team. They retained him as an advisor, like Ferrari does with Rory Byrne in particular, or, in that regard. Because I feel like there's been a hole at Williams since Paddy Lowe left. And even then, it didn't really work out when Paddy Lowe was at Williams. The stuff that he designed on the car just really didn't work in the same way that it did so well for him at Mercedes. So we'll have to wait and see how it works. Overall, I'm quite excited by what Williams are going to bring this season. I definitely feel this is not a stopgap season for them. They're definitely going to have a go at this. Having said that, I mean, they probably have done already, given the state, everybody has. But I'm wondering how much of a go they're going to give 2021 before they decide, look, guys, I think we have to prioritize 2022 now, because it's one thing, like Huss felt, to be at the back in 2021, knowing that it's if everything's going to change. It's another thing when everyone's on a level playing field and you've got this unique opportunity. The crazy thing is that in 2022, with all the budgets and the facilities that every single team has, no matter if you're Mercedes or if you're Haas, this is a unique opportunity where in 2022 we have no idea how the pecking order is going to be. I mean, it's as likely that Ferrari, for example, will win the championship as it is Williams in this, or Alfa Romeo. There's no one team that you could definitely say they're going to be the team to beat, or they're going to be one of the teams at the front. Even Mercedes aren't impervious to a potential drop-off if they do not get these 2022 regs right. So in Williams' mind, like everyone else, there's going to be this juggle between how much we prioritize 2021 in the early stages and then decide to cut the cord and focus primarily on 2022, because a lot of teams are going to go through that. And for the teams at the back end of the grid in this C class, their hand might be forced a lot sooner than teams that might be challenging for a championship, such as Mercedes or even Red Bull in this case.
Yeah, well, we've spoken about, well, I have in particular, people must have like a drinking game every time I mention 2022. It's come up so often. But yeah, for those of you who don't really know too much about Formula One, these regulations are a big deal. And, we said this so many times with these review episodes. If mistakes are made this year, it could have massive effects for these teams with these regulation changes, and they can't afford to get it wrong. So trust me, when you hear us talk about 2022, we are doing it with good reason.
Well, before we wrap it up, I'll give you a quick example of how this has worked in Formula One. The last huge regulation changes of this type that I can remember in 2009, when, they changed the design of the car. They went down to the V8 engines instead of the V10s and V12s. The curse system was introduced. The design of the car was completely radicalized. And the aim, of course, was to reduce the downforce by about 50% and make the racing a lot closer. They did achieve that to some degree. In some parts, of course, over time, it sort of went away. But the teams at the front in 2008 were Ferrari, McLaren, BMW Sauber. Those three teams in particular, those were the teams fighting at the front. And I remember back that season in 2008 when Lewis Hamilton won the World Championship, Ferrari and McLaren threw everything they could possibly do at the current cars all the way to the end of the season for Massa and Hamilton's sake. BMW Sauber prioritized 2008. And a lot of other teams did the same thing quite early on. They prioritized 2009, around about halfway through the season. BMW Sauber's case, they possibly threw away a potential chance at a world championship for Robert Kubica in 2008. In 2009, they still got it wrong. But at the start of the 2009 season, because the likes of Ferrari and McLaren were so late in the development of the new cars and the new regulations, they ended up at the front of the midfield. They were behind the Williamses, the Brauns, the Toyotas in particular. And, they really, really struggled. It only took them till the end of the season to really get on par with those top teams, by which time the season was over. So it's so important that the teams find the right balance between 2021 and 2022. And that's what I'm really fascinated, because if someone really goes for it and has a chance, if we have a championship battle between Red Bull and Mercedes, a really serious one, there could be the risk that one, if not both of those teams, may end up hurting their chances in 2022 onwards because they were too busy on 2021. If Red Bull have Verstappen with an opportunity to win the World Championship, you can bet your house that Red Bull are going to focus primarily on winning that title for Max Verstappen in 2021, because they may not get the opportunity in the years to come. So that is why it's so important, guys. You cannot understate how significant that cutoff point is going to be. And we have no idea when it is. Haas may have already said it for everybody else by doing what they're doing, and other teams may follow suit.
Yeah, I do know what. Couldn't put it any better. I'm already looking at 2022. Obviously, we've got a season ahead of us. I'm excited for it. I expect a really intense midfield battle. That's going to be the main highlight of this season. And potentially Lewis Hamilton versus Verstappen, of course, let's not forget that. But I think the main cause for excitement is 2022. Let's make that perfectly clear. It's going to be a massive year for the sport.
Absolutely. But I think we can agree on Williams. It looks a good car. I like the livery. I think they're going to do well this year. I'm predicting them to be 8th in the championship, ahead of Alfa Romeo and Haas, and perhaps maybe nipping at the heels of AlphaTauri or possibly Alpine as well, with a few points finishes this season. Hopefully some more for George Russell and maybe Nicholas Latifi as well. Probably fair to agree on that one, Courtney, or would you feel differently?
Yeah, pretty similar. I'm going to be optimistic, and I reckon they might be closer to AlphaTauri than we may have originally thought. But let's see on that one.
We'll see. It depends on how good that Honda engine is, of course. Fast tacking the 2022 engine, we may see how good that is. But I digress as always. But let us know what you think, guys. Do you like the new Williams livery? Are you a fan of it? I see a lot of people splitting the car in half and saying first half yes, second half not so much. But let us know what you think. Also, I should notice, actually, I didn't see any Rich Energy logos on the car. So, needless to say, I'm amazingly surprised if Ferrari ended up being the team that had. But I personally, unless a deal is struck late, I do feel the Rich Energy owner has basically duped us all out of our own fears and prejudices to Rich Energy, whether or not they're justified, by basically getting us to talk about them with this mystery over which team it was going to be. And it possibly is none of them, but the free exposure and advertisement from everybody, including us, talking about them is never necessarily a bad thing from any company's perspective. So, We'll make see. I mean, I hope it's not Ferrari, but it'd be a funny episode if Ferrari, the other shade of red on the Ferraris, because it's rich energy. Lord only knows. Anyway, let us know what you think of the new Williams or the livery. Do you like it or not so much? How do you think Williams are going to do this year? Do you feel that they're going to challenge the midfield this year, or do you feel like that Class C is the best that they're going to hope for? And of course, let us know how you feel 2022. We'll go for the Williams team as well. Just a quick shout out to our sponsors. As always, for the month of March, we are sponsored by Manscaped. Some great products that they've let us trial. Fantastic grooming products. Definitely recommend you go get yours. And you can use our code DNF1 to get 20% off plus free shipping on manscaped.com. So definitely get yourself one of those now. But until then, guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, and we will see you in the next episode of the DNF1 F1 Podcast. Take care.
See you soon.
Honestly, what are we doing?